Bry's Comics.
In this video, we're going to talk about why I sold most of my personal collection. We're going to talk about the current state of the comic book market, where we're currently at, and address questions like, is now a good time to buy? Is the comic book market going to continue to go down? If so, how much farther down is it going to go? We're going to cover all that and more in this video, but before we hop into it, we always do a monthly giveaway on this channel. If you subscribe, comment, and like this video, you're entered to win that. Beware of scams. I will never ask you to contact me on Telegram. There are scammers that hit up the comment sections. I'm doing everything I can to get ahead of that, but there's very little that I can actually do, but I am working to figure out a solution to that problem. We also have a monthly giveaway over on my website, bryscomics.com. If you sign up for the newsletter over there, you're entered to win a free slab each and every month, and I also send out discount codes and mystery boxes, first access to new collections. There's constantly new collections coming in, really great prices on my website, and you can always use the code COLLECT10 for 10% off in-stock items. You can also find me over on Instagram. That's the best way to get in touch with me. I do trades for grails and other fresh content over on Instagram. And I go live on Whatnot for live comic book sales that are an absolute blast. Link down in the description for $15 towards your first purchase. So I want to start this video by talking about where we currently are in the market. I'm sure most of you are pretty much aware of where we stand, but just to set the framework for this video, the last 3 years or so, we saw a massive run up and spike in prices in 2020 and 2021, and then we saw a huge correction or crash, if you will. I believe it's safe to use the word crash, where prices came crashing down in 2022, and now 2023 we are still seeing residual effects of that and still trending down. So that's where we currently are in the market in a nutshell. We saw a huge run up, and we are still seeing prices gradually coming down. So we are going to talk about more about the potential future state of the market. How much farther down is it going to go? Are we at the bottom? Things like that. But before we do that, I want to talk about why I sold most of my personal collection. Many of you might be saying, well, I see a lot of books behind you, and that is correct. I didn't sell absolutely everything in my personal collection, but I did sell the vast majority of the high value books in my collection. My personal collection, I break it down into basically two categories. We have my forever books, and these are books that I want to keep in the collection forever, but that doesn't mean that I won't sell them, because there's a lot of forever books in my collection that I sell and then buy back later. I'll get more into that here in just a sec, but the other part of my personal collection is wall hanger books. And so most of what you see behind me is wall hangers, and what I mean by that is just books that I enjoy looking at. And that's kind of a rotational basis. I'll enjoy them for a year or two and then decide that there's something else I'd rather replace it with, or I just, move on from that book. Those are my wall hanger books, because there's constantly new books that are coming to my attention, stuff that I've never seen before, and find out about and think, oh my God, that is so cool. And that's what I love about this hobby, is you can consistently, switch things out and constantly keep it fresh and find new enjoyment. There's so many books. It's such an awesome hobby for that reason. So I am a very unique collector, I believe, in the sense that I trade the curve for books in my personal collection. And what I mean by trade the curve is, if I have a book in my collection that's a grail, it's a forever book for me, it's something that I always want in my collection, but I think that it is going to see a run up or a spike in prices, I will sell that book at the spiked price, and that with the intention of buying back in when that price comes back down. And that could happen over and over and over again, because comic books have many different lives. And I've found that if you trade the curve, you can upgrade those books in your collection. So maybe I have a Fantastic Four #1 and a 2.5, and I could sell it at a certain price and buy back like a 4.0 for the same price that I sold that 2.5 at, by trading the curve. And in so doing, I can upgrade those forever books without any new money out of pocket. It's all comic book money. The problem with this method is that you have to part with that beloved key of yours for an undetermined amount of time. And for a lot of people, that's a deal breaker. It's like, yeah, I don't want to be without my Fantastic Four #1. The one that I'm struggling with the most is the Tales of Suspense 39. That book, for whatever reason, it's like the top of the list for me. It just moves me the most emotionally, that book. I don't know what it is about it. So it has been difficult to be without that book, but I'm seeing the prices of that book and I'm seeing the values come down to a point where I can buy back in a much nicer copy of that book, hopefully very soon. And so if I persevere through that period of time without having that book, I'll be so much happier in the long run because I'll have much better copies of these books. Which brings me to the next part of this video. Is now a good time to buy, or is the market going to continue to come down? And if so, how much farther down is it going to go? I've done a lot of research on, trying to find a solid answer to this question. I've seen a lot of interviews and podcasts and financial experts talking about the current state of the financial market. And I do think that that is the biggest factor for comic book prices is the economy overall. You may say, that the reception of Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 4 is causing prices to come down. There's a lot of different, theories and people's ideas about why comic book prices are coming down. And there may be merit to most of them, but I think the driving factor and the most important factor is the economy overall. And from these interviews and this research that I've done trying to get an idea of what's going on in the economy and where it's headed, first of all, I'm not a financial expert. This is not financial advice. You should never take financial advice from me. This is just total bro science from what I found. And it seems like even the experts have a really hard time giving a solid answer. They're all kind of like, we don't really know. So everybody that says they do know, take it with a grain of salt. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But my best guess from everything that I've seen is that 2023 is going to be a year where we see some more slight declines. We may go into a mild recession, and it may take 2 to 3 years from now to fully come out of this financial downturn that we're seeing in the country. And that's absolutely possible. So I do spend a ton of time pricing comic books. I mean, the majority of my time in the day is spent looking up prices of comic books. There isn't a single day that has gone by in probably the past year, maybe 2 years, where I haven't bought or sold a comic. Every single day I'm either buying or selling or both. And, every single week, usually people are sending me, lists of their collection of their slabs. So I'm spending hours upon hours in gpanalysis.com looking up prices of books. We're talking about thousands and thousands of comic books that I've looked up, probably in just the past few months. When we first came out of the comic book boom, when we were at that peak, we saw a really sharp decline for that first month or two. We saw declines in prices going down 15 to 30% across the board. And I was getting really nervous at that time because I was thinking to myself, is this do I need to go into a buying freeze? How long is this going to continue? If I buy collections at 60% or 70% of fair market value and they go down 20 or 30%, there goes my margins and now I'm actually in the red. And so I was actually pleasantly surprised that it quickly slowed down. That initial decline that we saw off the peak of the market quickly slowed down to where now we're seeing decreases in values of comic books month over month, less than 10%, sometimes substantially less than 10%. Sometimes it is 10% that we'll see a loss in that month. But that is enough of a margin to where I can still buy and sell comics with that 10%, buffer and still not worry about, going out of business. And it has slowed down. So let's hop into the computer real quick and take a look at some actual numbers to make a couple predictions here. So here we are in GP analysis, and we're looking at Giant Size X-Men #1 from 1975. And the reason I chose this book is because it changes hands a lot. There's a lot of copies of it on the census, but even more importantly, it's in incredibly high demand. It's always going to be a very sought after key. And I think for that reason, it gives a good representation of the comic book market in general. And here you can see this giant run up at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, a scary drop off, a few bounces off the bottom, but a general trend going down to where we have the most recent sale being $3,000 here in January of 2023. And the sale right before the comic book market boom, before the run up, was $2,324. So we're about 20% higher than we were pre-market boom. So I want to hear from you guys. How do you think this is going to play out? Because I can see this playing out several different ways. One, I can see that this current trend continuing to go down about another 20% until it's actually in line with prices pre-market boom, almost as if the market boom never happened. I can also see it not going quite that far down and leveling off at, say, another 5 or 10% down, and then maybe trending sideways while we try to gain some stability in the economy before it starts to slowly trend back up. I could also see it going down farther than it was pre-market boom and going back down to 2019 prices. However, I think there would have to be continued negative developments in the economy for it to go down 30% more, which is absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible to have more negative developments in the economy and we go down below pre-market boom prices. Now, the other scenario here is the X factor. Something catastrophic happens in the world and we see a giant drop off. And I think if that were to happen, we would have a lot bigger worries on our hands than the prices of comic books. So if prices continue to go down, my guess, and again, this is just speculation, nobody can predict the future, but my guess would be that a maximum of 20 to 30% lower that we can go in prices. And if it goes anything more than that, if we see like a 50% drop in price, that would probably mean that there has been a catastrophic event, which is totally possible. But if there's a catastrophic event that causes, a complete uproar in the economy and comic book prices and everything, I think we have bigger problems on our hands than, the values of our grails going down. And so that's why I don't think we should necessarily plan for that X factor, catastrophic event. Maybe Russia drops a nuke and it sends the world into chaos. I don't think we should make our decisions based off of that unknown fear necessarily. Otherwise, you're just going to sell all your comics and buy a bunker. And I don't really think that that's any way to live your life. But, to each their own on that front. Which brings up a really good point, and that is we need to still live our lives. And as collectors, we love and enjoy this hobby of comic book collecting, and it's not like we can just go into an absolute freeze. And so I think that we can bring up this example of Wolverine #1 right there in 9.8. Let's talk about that book as an example of whether or not now is a good time to buy. I think that book right now, just for simplicity's sake, we'll say it's around a $600 book. So let's play the tape through different scenarios. Let's say that book comes down 20%. If it came down 20%, that's $120. It would be $480. So let's say in a year from now, it comes down 20%, and that's a $480 book. If you take a look at this from the macro perspective, let's say in 5 years, it goes back up to 600. Maybe it even goes up farther than that to 700 or 800. So if you look at this 5 years from now and say, okay, I bought that book for $600 in 2023, and now it's worth $700 or $800, it doesn't really matter that it came down a little bit. So I think personally, it's not a terrible time to buy. It's certainly not like it was 3 or 6 months ago, which that would have been, a lot worse time to buy. There's a couple other things that need to be brought into consideration with books like that and this hobby in general, and that is the enjoyment that you get out of that book. When I buy a new comic book off the shelf for $5 and read that comic book, and maybe I spend, 20 or 30 minutes with that comic, enjoying the art, enjoying the story, and then maybe a couple hours after that, I'm still thinking about the story, thinking about where it could possibly go. I think that $5 invested for that new comic book is such an amazingly good deal for the amount of entertainment that I got out of it. That's what I love about this hobby the most, is the entertainment value. And it's the same with the Wolverine #1. There's an enjoyment value. So let's say you bought it now for $600, you put it on your wall, and you enjoy that book for the next year. And say it does come down 20% and it's now a $480 book. What price tag do you put on 1 year of enjoyment? There's certainly value to that. And I think in that sense, if you look at it from that point of view, that if you're still buying in today's market, even if it goes down 10, 20, 30% from now, the enjoyment that you've had in this hobby has value. And in a sense, I think that that could very well make up for whatever value drop you have in those books. There's other examples of different types of books where now might absolutely be an incredibly good time to buy. I think now is an incredible time to be cash heavy in this hobby because of deals and books that we're seeing come to market that often, don't come to market for years and years and years. And there are good deals to be had at auction houses. Just the other day, I was in a My Comic Shop auction. Don't sleep on My Comic Shop, you guys. They have some great auctions with some really good books that there's often, not as many eyes on it. And I was bidding on Marvel Family #1, the first appearance of Black Adam. It was a 5.5 old label, and I was bidding on that book up to $10,000. I bid $10,000 and ended up selling for $10,600. And in hindsight, looking back, I think that was a missed opportunity. I think that I should have gone up to maybe $11,000, but I didn't know how high the other bidder was going to go. Maybe he would have went clear up to $15,000 and it would be a completely different conversation. But I think that buyer that bought that book for $10,600 got a fantastic deal. It was also an old label case, and it was a potential CPR candidate or crack press resubmit candidate. Another great way to fund the hobby, which I talk about all the time on this channel. So if it is a risk and kind of a roll of the dice, but if that was a good CPR candidate, if that buyer was able to get that book bumped up to like a 6.0 or a 6.5 from its current 5.5, instant equity in that book. So I think he got a fantastic deal. The most recent sale before that was a 4.5 for $20,000. So this was $10,000 less for two full grades higher. And of course, there's a lot that goes into that. Black Adam movie, not as well received as could have been. It was after all the movie hype, but I still think that that's an incredibly rare and important golden age book. And I think that there was a really good deal that was had on that. And this is happening all over at auction houses. And I think a big part of that is you're sitting in that auction, and with the state of the current economy and all the uncertainty, and this book comes up, I mean, you're just a lot less likely to pull the trigger on $10,000, $20,000, and there are good deals to be had. So I think regardless of if the market overall continues to go down, there will definitely be deals at auction houses that are abnormally lower than fair market value. So I think in that sense, it's an incredible time to be cash heavy in this hobby. And I'm hoping that 2023 is the year where, we actually do hit that bottom and start to go, at least sideways or trend back up. I think it's likely that we may trend sideways for a year, maybe even as much as 2 years, but sideways is great. Sideways is stable. I think that's the biggest thing that we're looking for here is stability. The uncertainty is what's really keeping prices down. And once we can get to a place of more stability, more faith in the general economy, I think that's when we'll see prices start to trend back up. So there you have it, guys. Just me talking about my current thoughts on the current state of the market, why I sold off most of the books that I did, and me talking about whether or not now is a good time to buy. And I think it's all very deeply personal to your specific situation. There'll be different answers to those questions depending on who you are in your current state. We always do that monthly giveaway here on the YouTube channel. If you subscribe, comment, and like, you're entered to win that. And if you head over to brycecomics.com and sign up for the newsletter, you'll get first access to new collections and discount codes, and you're also entered to win a free slab each and every month. Thank you, as always, for sticking with me to the end of the video. I can't wait to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Where are we headed? What do you think as far as is now a good time to buy? Thank you, as always, for sticking with me to the end, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bryce Comics.